This broadcast is inappropriate for all ages, right here on hashtag WeAreMovieClub. This is Bad Movie Club. Salutations, I am Camerai, and this is... and I am conversation ready, you would think, right? This is Bad Movie Club, where we get together and watch movies that are so bad they are made manifest, or there are movie ideas so bad they are made manifest for our disgust. And I gotta be honest, the 1990 Captain America movie definitely falls into that. Now, granted, we're watching this with the bias of watching the modern day Captain America movies. I guess to include Civil War, that's not really what I'm talking about. But if you have watched the storylines from Captain America the First Avenger and Captain America Winter Soldier, both those plot lines are basically in here minus Winter Soldier. But it's just more dealing with the Red Skull. So it is interesting to see the initial approach on this, especially compared with the modern movie, because the pacing's way different. In the modern things, they have a nice slow pacing. They build without expositioning. A lot of this movie is speed, but they stop for the establishing shots. They just rush everything. Which it's very interesting to see that. I guess that was a 1980s, 1990s type thing. If I think about John Hughes, maybe they did a lot of that because you wanted to know and identify the pieces so that they were more important when you got to romancing them and everything. But even for John Hughes, the pacing was like triple that. So let's jump in. We open on an old country style house. Russian KGB bursts in, is what it seems like. It turns out that it's actually German secret police, but they shoot someone, they steal a kid, they shoot a lot. I guess it's supposed to be at the rest of the family. It's very apparent, like, by this point it's Germans. And then there's a lab, and it's very obvious they've been experimenting with things. They've got, like, this creepy, ugly, super hell rat thing. So apparently somewhere in the universe, in the Marvel U, there is a... super soldier rat. But they bring in the boy, supposedly to experiment on him, and there's one woman scientist in this entire lab that protests, and because we can't work on a child, and then they almost shoot her, and then she escapes, and we hear the boy screams inside. Cut to 1943. I don't remember what the original year was, if I'm being honest. We're seeing the White House. Intelligence devolves Germany create the Red Skull. So I'm assuming that the young boy was Red Skull. Maybe. There's another genetically viable candidate, American Steve Rogers, which is interesting that we're specifying like genomes back in the 1940s. But Steve's all grown up. He's getting ready to leave. His mom's all upset about it. His girlfriend's out on the beach. She's just as upset. I'll wait for you forever and ever. Same kind of lame shit they used to sing in the 1980s for romance. And it's the same scientist lady that protested back in Germany. Why the fuck? That goes to save him. Which is very nice of her. Whatever. Stupid internet. Which is very nice of her to go be doing this, and she obviously brought the Super Soldier program over from Germany to help the Americans. Very similar to how the Doctor in First Avenger did. So you can see where they got a lot of the inspirations for the latter movies. But there's a cafe. Some weirdos go into a cafe, and they end up going into a back room. What the fuck? Oh, this is that game thing. No wonder Boogie's on it. Sorry, I thought somebody was actually asking for legitimate help, so I felt obligated to continue to read. Rooster, don't type on my keyboard. But the waitress he talks to has a gun under the counter. Again, very similar to how First Avenger was. He ends up going to the back to hang up their coats, and they go through some secret door in the back hallway. Um, they enter a lab, and Steve's about to Captain America it up. And this is about halfway through the first Avenger, but 12 minutes into this movie. Just saying. He's the best candidate out of 600 plus. So, yay. Captain America is a pre-designed code name. So it's not like he got named Captain America after the fact. They went in trying to design a Captain America, and they had him selected for the process. This procedure begins, and it just has me imagining an army of Captain Americas. Now, I like that they did that too, because what was it, Isaiah Thomas? Isaiah something was the first Captain America. He was the first super soldier. They tested it on a black soldier back in the 1940s when they had black regiments or black companies. Well, same way they had woman companies. They didn't have a lot of them, but they did have, by World War II, that we were progressive enough that we would let people fight in the war and risk their lives, but we would restrict. So stupid. We would restrict them to their own companies. I feel horrible saying that. It's not we. It's that the government then did. I say we as a nation, and I am disgusted by it. So, anyways, so the power ends up going out and comes back, and then there's a weirdo. I forgot about this. There's a weirdo in a suit goes to shake the doctor's hand, and as he's like he goes to shake the doctor's hand, right? And then as she goes to reach for his hand, it's this weird like, oh, too slow, and then he does a Roman salute, the thing that the Nazis did, in theory, like, and that's still funny because Hitler threatened to kill people for doing that, or execute them rather. So he hits the Roman salute, so it's like, oh, just kidding, and then at the same time he's got his arm up, he pulls a gun and shoots her. It's the funniest gunshot I've ever fucking seen, and he yells "Hail Hitler" at the same time. And it's, even just remembering it, it's fucking hilarious. And he starts shooting other people. The doc's mortally wounded. And I don't think he got out of there. I don't think it was even like a cool car chase or anything. I think he went there to die. Now, it's fucked up that somebody brought him there because they were the last two to show up. So I'm willing to bet that guy got executed. So in the hospital, Steve apparently took some injuries too, but he's fully recovered like within a day or so. An unforeseen side effect, if you will. On the plane, oh yeah, so yeah, they're in the cargo plane, sorry, the jump plane. So he's got his uniform on him. It's red, white, and blue, but it's apparently fireproof. And he's complaining that it's not camouflage, but yeah. Because the doc had all the secrets in her head, the formula's gone forever. That sounds familiar. And there will be no more super soldiers. Let's see. He jumps out of the plane. He even has his shield, which we're not explained. It's got a green cloth cover on it, though, so it's not really like the shield until we see later. But we're in a Nazi camp of some kind. And he's trying to sneak in, but a spotlight happens, so of course he throws his shield, and there's just these horrible effects of it bouncing around and stuff. It looks just ridiculous. The Cap charges in. He ends up using like a 5-ton truck as cover. He ends up rolling it to cover him as he moves. And then he throws his boomerang shield a few more times, which I'm always upset that it comes back to him. It just never makes any sense. He finally makes his way to the hangar bay, and Cap finds the Red Skull. And the Red Skull's kind of happy to see him. He throws his shield, the Red Skull catches it, and then throws it into the ground. Like, he throws it down hard enough that it sinks into the cement, if you will. I guess that's a way to put it. The Red Skull comes down and proceeds to just whoop his ass. Like, he just beats the snot out of him. To the point where he actually apprehends him and puts him in this prison tube. But it's not a very good prison tube because it's attached to a rocket, sure, but it's not isolated. So they reveal that it's aimed for the White House, and Cap ends up grabbing Red Skull's hand. So, and the launch can't be stopped, so the Skull panics and cuts his own hand off, which I guess is what you do in this scenario. I would have just started hitting him again, because that worked the first time. In D.C., a stupid kid sneaks out of the house to go see the White House. I don't know if they're in a B&B back then, if they're visiting relatives, but the kid's so excited, go use his disposable camera to go photograph the White House, and that kid would have been shot today, I'm telling you. They put a fence around the fence, and then if you go to the second fence too close, they come out and talk to you. They're like, what are you doing here? Get out of here. People used to throw quarters and stuff on the lawn and whatever. Which honestly has got to mess up the lawn maintenance machines, like the mowers and stuff. But while he's there photographing, Cap comes through with the rocket. And apparently he waited until he got to the White House to kick the fins on the rocket to bend them so that it would guide the rocket away from the White House. But the kid is able to take a picture of the guy strapped to the rocket that saved the White House. So he spends like the next 40 years or whatever, like trying to figure that out, because the missile ends up going to the Arctic, and that's where Captain America stays in Alaska frozen until somebody digs him out later on, like in the 1980s or 90 or whatever it is. Back in Springfield, I think it's Ohio, kid and friend try to figure out who the man on the missile was, and for some reason, an Aquaman is a candidate, but they rule him out. We fast forward to the 1990s, something boring shit. Hydra meeting. They're basically modern day Nazis. They discuss killing President Kimball, who turns out it was the kid who saw the man strapped to the rocket, essentially. There's a creepy guy with a damaged face, proposes not assassinating him, and then gives a complicated plan that I didn't want to listen to. And it turns out that guy's Red Skull. It just wasn't super obvious at the time. I'm sorry, my investment in this movie was not ever very heavy, if I'm being honest. But they people managed to extract Steve from the ice, and they bring him back to camp. And then he manages to break out of the ice. It's so much funnier to say than what actually happens, but he bursts out of the ice, like ice literally explodes. He goes, Nazis, and he runs out of the tent, just to like a bunch of bewildered scientists. There's an office somewhere, a couple old men that were the kids that we saw earlier. They're excited about the guy in the rocket, because he's been sighted. Over in Rome, Hydra's talking more plans about President Kimball, that I don't care about, honestly. But it becomes very clear if you're not at that point that like looking at his mechanical hand that it's Red Skull. Back in America, Steve's like lost in the woods. The old guy who's not the president, that was a kid researching him, ends up driving out there to try to look for Steve. There's helicopters flying out there as well, which are the Red Skull's minions, which wasn't apparent to me at the time. So the helicopters sit down and then manage to deploy motorcycles. And I don't know if you've seen helicopters and stuff, but it's not obvious where those motorcycles were hidden, unless they were strapped to the bottom of the helicopter, which I didn't see. But they go into the woods after Steve. Steve keeps running. No idea where he thinks he's going. Honestly, he's just woods. He ends up throwing the shield and missing. Somehow it gets back to him. The lady from the helicopter is shooting at him, so it's obvious like that they were the ones on the motorcycles. Sorry, they spent so much time giving us continuity shots without actual continuity. It's really kind of ridiculous how much effort was put in to have that still happen. So the old guy manages to pick up Steve in the truck, and starts to kind of interrogate Steve, which is what I would do if I was the bad guys. I would send two groups, the aggressive ones and then a friendly one. Steve, of course, still thinks it's 1943, so the old guy starts talking to him as if it is, but he's mentioning all these assassinations that he thinks Hydra's involved in, and he's like, oh, you don't know who I'm talking about. Or that Red Skull was involved in, not necessarily Hydra. Steve pretends to be ill, like carsick. The guy pulls over. Steve kind of wanders back away from the truck a bit, acting like he's going to throw up. The guy comes out to check on him because he's a good guy, and Steve runs back to the truck and steals it. It's the most ridiculous Captain America thing ever. And then he finally figures out that he's in Canada. So I have no idea how he gets back to the United States. We'll get this weird music montage where Steve's trying to get home. I'm sorry, and then Steve tries to get home. He finds his old house. And he confuses his old girlfriend's daughter because he mistakes her for Bernie. And then Bernie comes out and she stops her husband from attacking him, which would have gone really badly. And it's a super romantic moment with the husband watching, so he's basically cucked for a little bit. I think he went out to have beers with the fellas, because he doesn't seem to stick around for the idea of this much. But Steve comes in, and there's lots of bullshit about catching up. And we in the chat, because we watched this at Rabbit/Camera for hashtag Bad Movie Club, Sundays, 7 p.m. Eastern. Like, we had a long discussion about, like, you let Captain America, excuse me, like, have your wife, right? Like, or girl, or boyfriend, whatever, if Captain America was into that. Which, I don't, he's kind of shy at best. But, like, it was a couple guys talking, so it's like, you let him have your wife, right? Like, or at least if your wife's into it. And I think it falls under, like, celebrity rules. Because, like, if... God, who's... I don't know. Ryan Reynolds. If Ryan Reynolds comes over and is like, your wife Carol there's real babe. And I'm going to kill my cats because they're jerks. How long has that been long? Stop messing with the cameras. It's like, well, sure. Do I watch? Do I sit in the other room? Do I go out and pick up pizza for afterwards? You guys will build up an appetite. I'm just saying, like, there's certain situations where it's like, yeah. And I don't think I'd want to be there because I wouldn't want the comparison between me and a super soldier. My only concern, like, I'd want to be on hand in case he hurts her on accident, but because there's always that conversation about, like, Superman and, like, he must come like a shotgun. So who knows what happens with Captain America. If he just gets too excited, she'll break a hip. Ugh. So there's a lot of bullshit that happens. But turns out, like, the old guy who calls the president all the time, his phone's tapped. So Red Skull knows what's going on with shit. And he ends up going to get Bernie to get back at Captain America. But it turns out Captain America's hanging out with her daughter at her house, watching movies and catching up on history. And it kind of looks like they're on a date or something. Like, I'm just being honest. Maybe it's a little creepy or whatever, but it's all within bounds because Bernie's old now. She's married. And given the conversation we just had, it is what it is. But, like, the daughter's single, looks like she did when he left the first time. So there's just a lot to be said for that makes sense, if you will. But the assassins end up showing up at Bernie's. They end up shooting her dead. Horrible silencer sound effects, by the way. The assassins, they get Bernie, they get her husband. For whatever reason, Steve and the daughter end up going back to the house to check on Bernie and her husband. They show up in time to watch the hubby die, but hubby passes off information to Steve. Mom's dead, and so Steve feels really bad for endangering all of them, like he knew that was going to happen. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess the husband didn't die. He goes to the hospital and he's in critical condition because she ends up putting Wheel of Fortune on for him, even though he's unconscious. And then a news report interrupts saying that the president was abducted from his house by 20 heavily armed men because the Secret Service isn't good at their job, apparently. So this has Steve drive them to the cafe. They go to the ladies' room and break through the wall. Finds the old coat rack, secret entrance. The lab's all gross. Steve grabs a diary. Armed people show up to the cafe. Steve and his new girlfriend hide under the stairs, which are open, so they get to watch people walk down the stairs. And then as they enter the lab, they sneak up the stairs and run away. It's so stupid. But when they get to the stairwell, it's up the little ramp. There's a shootout. The daughter ends up getting kidnapped along with the diary. In the hallway, Steve rips off a boiler cover to use as a shield. And uses the dark to his advantage. I don't know if super soldiers can see in the dark better, but probably. Bad guy goes to shoot him. And the girl backhands his gun away. He knocks her out. And the guy ends up with an initial advantage, but Cap beats his ass because it's Captain America. And then he throws him down a chute. I am overly concerned with where this chute goes because they're already like a couple floors underground. So where the fuck does that go? Does that go into like some underground cavern? A underground river? Lava? Is that their incinerator? Is that just their trash? Does it go to the septic tank? Like, where do you go that's 4 or 5 floors underground in a chute? It seems really cruel for Captain America, I'm just saying. Back on Surface World, they manage to escape and drive away. They're looking at the diary, and it manages to reveal clues about Red Skull's identity, which I don't really think is that useful, if I'm being honest. Back in Red Skull's dungeon, he's interrogating Kimball. And I just don't care about anything that comes out of Skull's mouth. I'm being honest. It's in my notes. It's exactly what I wrote down. Nothing he says fucking matters. He's probably one of the worst attempts at a villain I've seen from Marvel ever. Granted, this is before the MCU. So, and they're in Rome at this point, but in the car, Steve pretends to get sick again. So he does the same stupid thing he did the other guy. He pretends to be ill, and then he races back and steals the tiny car from her. Because he doesn't want to endanger her as he goes to find information on Red Skull. I'm going to just skip some of this. But Steve manages to get to a place and knock on the door. He doesn't speak Italian, but sure enough, his girlfriend shows up, who does speak Italian, so there was no point in him trying to ditch her. None whatsoever. It didn't lend to anything other than humor, and let's be honest, not so much there. But of course, it's not Red Skull's house anymore. New people bought it. But they get some information, and they find this old recording device thing. And they get it to a shop to list do it. Great, whatever. They have lunch. She makes fun of Steve's detective skills. The assassins show up, and I was really kind of impressed with this because they kind of pointedly say hello, smile at them or whatever, and then sit at the table behind Steve. Then openly, in broad daylight, pull out guns to shoot Steve in the back. But she manages to warn him soon enough. Sorry, the girlfriend, Bernie's daughter, manages to warn him soon enough that he can pull the shield out of the mat bag that he's carrying, which is very unapparent that that bag existed up until this point, to get the shield up to block the shots. And it really begs the question, how did he get his shield through customs? I granted it was the 1990s and not now, but still. So they run from the car, they save some kids, Cap has his shield, they steal a bike, and they ride it into an ocean because it has no brakes. which is a bike. You can just put your feet down or pedal backwards. If it doesn't work to pedal backwards, I understand. You can still put your feet down. You can turn the bike, run into anything that doesn't throw you into the ocean. But the assassins assume that the ocean has taken them because it's Rome, and it's not like you can swim in the ocean just fine. Actually, it can't be Rome, because Rome's not on the... I gotta look that up now. I need Google Maps. Because if I remember right, Rome's in the middle of the country. You can't... Yeah, now granted, if you go out west, because it's not in the middle, it's on the western edge, but you're still miles, like several cities away, from being anywhere near the ocean. So I have no idea where they actually wrote into. Oh my god, Bad Movie Club made for it. And they're just stumped once that happens. Back at the square, the police are everywhere. The daughter manages to steal the assassin lady's purse that she dropped, and she's dry, which is interesting that she got there that fast in dry conditions. And then they start driving through these fields, and everyone's driving through these fields. So they're leading like this caravan of gangsters essentially at this point, through all the country. Back in the dungeon. They managed to capture her, and they let Steve like run through the woods. But so they throw her in a cell. They threaten the president. Skull has this stupid looking gun. It really looks like it's an enema pistol, and I think it's actually like a needle gun, like so that you don't have to like, you can just and like inject somebody, but it really looks like it's designed to go in someone's butt and wash it. I'm just saying. Out on the beach, Captain America suits up. In the dungeon, the president uses a stupid trick to get out of the cell. So he escapes just as Steve's rolling in. And Steve's like scaling the wall with his bare hands type thing. Right when the president's cornered and jumps off the edge, Captain manages to catch him and throws him through a window and then follows. Like, small world theory at its finest. Inside they manage to chat, they run. Captain attempts to cover him. But if I'm being honest, he really looks like Captain's using them as a human shield. The guy's running in front of Cap, and like they do this weird thing where he's like holding his shield like this, maybe. So, ugh. And as they're running through, the president runs into like a traitor general who helps sell him out. So he manages to punch that guy out, which, go President Kimball, right? Apparently there's a throne room where Cap faces off against Skull, dialogue-wise. The president starts shooting, which I think is funny, and gets in his own fights. Uses the Captain America's shield for a bit. The daughter starts fighting the highly trained assassins, which, I don't know. Cap ends up using his shield to cut a gun in half during a throw. And I can't remember if he like does one of these or if it's actually during a throw. But there's a cool scene somewhere in here where like the president like skip throws his shield to him like a frisbee. Ridiculous, but it's still funny. Let's see. Skull ends up eventually ends up getting a machine gun. And that's when he does the skip throw so that Captain America does like 4 backflips to get it. So it's ridiculous that the machine gun fire starts, then the throw happens, then the backflips happen, and then like he's still okay. Granted, it's like an AK-47 Kalashnikov, whatever you want to call it. So like the accuracy's shit, but whatever. So the daughter ends up having an assassin at gunpoint. And is slowly on her way to becoming a villain herself, but she gets distracted or whatever, and the assassin gets away. So you got to remember to act quickly in those scenarios. Like, don't monologue about you killed my, I am Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. It's okay to say it once. And then in Ego, you gotta just kill him. You know what I'm saying? So, apparently, Skull makes it into a device of some kind. It's a bomb that is next to a piano that's up on a ledge, which is beautiful scenery and probably a lovely place to play when you have way too much money, but it's really weird. And apparently it's a bomb that's going to take out all of Southern Europe. So Skull's assassin daughter makes it to him. Cap's throwing his magic boomerang shield around Skull. It doesn't even manage to hit him. Skull shoots at Bernie's daughter. Skull and his daughter stand together waiting to die. Cap manages to throw a shield and actually hits Skull square in the chest. He goes flying off the cliff. I thought he was holding the device. Maybe not. Maybe he did. I don't think the altitude matters when it's going to take out all of Southern Europe. Just saying. But then all of a sudden, a bunch of soldiers show up with the president, and everything's okay. They go out on a report of what happened, casualty-wise and everything. It is quite the ridiculous movie. Part of me is really just laughing that they even made this attempt. I can't imagine going to publish this movie. Now, granted, if it's your baby and you've been working on it, you're biased, fine. But especially today, even a modernization of this movie would be pretty bad. You'd have to fix a lot of things, particularly the pacing, which they did fix when they did Captain America: The First Avenger and Winter Soldier. Granted that Winter Soldier is more of a Winter Soldier movie than a Captain America movie, but the first storyline bleeds over into the second movie. It's just how it is. But that's all we really got. Join us Sundays, 7 p.m. Eastern, for on Rabbit/Camerai for Bad Movie Club. We have a good time talking about movies and making fun of stuff. But that's it for Bad Movie Club. Right here on #WeAreMovieClub. If I see anything else we're up to, go ahead and click the annotations, and they'll take you to our other channels. Thanks for watching.